The wrench slipped from Jamie's oil-slicked fingers just as the Harley's engine gave its dying rattle. She caught it before it hit the concrete, muscle memory saving her from what would have been a costly mistake. At 2 a.m, Murphy's auto shop was supposed to be locked tight, but here she was, bent over a machine that could buy her mother's medication for the next 6 months, if she could fix it. The rumble of another motorcycle cut through the night air. Jamie's blood turned to ice water. She wasn't supposed to be here. More importantly, she wasn't supposed to have company. The bay door stood open to catch the October breeze, and through it walked Trouble in leather and denim. Even before she saw his face, Jamie's wolf stirred restlessly. Alpha. Dangerous. The kind that made smart omegas run the other direction. You cross? His voice was whiskey and smoke, rougher than the engine she'd been nursing back to life. Jamie straightened slowly, wiping her hands on her coveralls. The man filling her doorway was built like he could tear apart a truck with his bare hands, all broad shoulders and corded muscle. Dark hair fell across sharp cheekbones, and when he stepped into the fluorescent light, she caught the glint of steel-gray eyes that seemed to see right through her. Hell's Angel. Had to be, with that predatory stillness, and the way he moved like violence was always an option. Depends who's asking. She kept her voice steady despite her heart hammering against her ribs. A smile ghosted across his mouth, there and gone. Ryder Blackwood. Got a bike that needs fixing. The name hit her like a slap. Everyone in a 50-mile radius knew that name. Ryder Reaper Blackwood, president of the local Hells Angels chapter. The kind of alpha who settled disputes with his fists and left bodies in his wake. Jamie's wolf whimpered, torn between fear and something far more dangerous. Shop's closed, she said, but her eyes had already found his Harley through the open door. Beautiful machine, but she could hear the irregular catch in the idle from here. Come back Monday. Can't wait that long. He stepped closer, and Jamie caught his scent despite the suppressants she'd been taking since she was 16. Pine and leather, motor oil, and something uniquely male that made her mouth water. Heard you're the best mechanic in 3 counties. Heard wrong. But she was already walking toward his bike, drawn despite herself. The Harley was a work of art, all chrome and black paint, but someone had done her wrong. What happened to her? Sabotage. The word was flat, matter of fact. Someone wants me dead. Jamie ran her hands along the engine, feeling for the problem. There, a loose connection that would have sent him into a tree at the first hard turn. Her fingers traced the deliberately damaged parts, and her wolf snarled at the scent of malicious intent. This'll take a few hours, she said, not looking at him. Cost you triple my usual rate. Done. She should have said no. Should have told him to take his death machine and his dangerous presence somewhere else. Instead, she found herself pulling out her tools. You can wait outside. Rather watch. He leaned against the workbench, those gray eyes tracking her every movement. Don't get many female mechanics. Don't get many that know what they're doing, period. Jamie ignored the way his stare made her skin prickle. She'd learned long ago that the best way to survive was to be too useful to dismiss. Hand me that socket wrench. He moved to help before she finished the sentence, and their fingers brushed as he passed her the tool. The contact sent electricity shooting up her arm, and from the way his nostrils flared, he'd felt it too. Omega. The word hung in the air between them, unspoken but understood. Jamie's hands never paused in their work, even as her pulse kicked into overdrive. She'd been taking suppressants for years, masking her scent, her heat cycles, everything that would mark her as prey in a world where alphas took what they wanted. But this one saw right through her defenses. Got a name? His voice had dropped an octave, and Jamie's wolf rolled over like a lovesick puppy. Jamie. Pretty name for a pretty omega. Her wrench stilled. I'm not. Yeah, you are. Not cruel, just certain. Question is, what's a little omega doing working alone in a garage at 2 a.m? Same thing anyone does. Making a living. She bent back over the engine, using work as a shield. My mother's sick. Medical bills don't pay themselves. Something shifted in his expression, a softness that transformed his harsh features. What's wrong with her? Cancer. The word tasted bitter. The good treatments aren't covered by insurance. They worked in companionable silence after that, Jamie fixing his bike while Ryder handed her tools and watched her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable. Instead, it felt oddly protective, like having a guard dog at her back. She was tightening the last bolt when headlights swept across the garage floor. Jamie's stomach dropped to her boots. She knew that engine sound, knew the way Murphy's truck wheezed and coughed like a dying thing. Shit. She scrambled to her feet, mind racing. You need to go. Now. But it was too late. Murphy's bulk filled the doorway, his face flushed with drink and rage. What the hell do you think you're doing in my shop? Jamie straightened her shoulders. Working. Same as always. Not on your own jobs, you don't. Murphy's small eyes fixed on Ryder, and she saw the moment he recognized the Hell's Angel. Fear and greed warred in his expression, greed winning. Who authorized this work? I did. Ryder's voice carried the kind of quiet menace that made smart men step carefully. Got a problem with that? Murphy's Adam's apple bobbed, but he held his ground. Shop policy. No unauthorized after-hours work. Jamie, you're fired. The words hit her like a physical blow. Murphy, please. I need this job. Should have thought of that before. He held out his hand to Ryder. That'll be $800. I didn't quote 800, Jamie protested. My shop, my prices. Murphy's smile was ugly. Pay up, or take your bike and go. Ryder's jaw clenched, but he reached for his wallet. Triple rate was the deal. Deals changed. Jamie watched in sick horror as Murphy pocketed the money that was supposed to keep her mother alive for another month. The Alpha's eyes met hers across the garage, and she saw something there that might have been regret. Jamie. Ryder's voice was soft. I'm sorry. She nodded, throat too tight for words. Sorry didn't pay for chemotherapy. Murphy waited until the Harley's engine faded into the distance before turning on her. Clean out your locker. I want you gone in 10 minutes. Jamie gathered her tools with shaking hands, each wrench and socket a small piece of her life being stripped away. 7 years she'd worked here, turning Murphy's failing garage into something profitable, and this was how it ended. The night air bit at her skin as she loaded her toolbox into her beat-up Honda. Somewhere in the darkness, a motorcycle engine purred with perfect timing, but she didn't look back. She had bigger problems than mysterious alphas and their dangerous games. She had a mother to save and no idea how she was going to do it. Chapter 2. 3 days later, Jamie stared at the eviction notice taped to her apartment door and wondered if rock bottom had a basement. 30 days. That's how long she had before the landlord threw her and her mother onto the street. The crumpled bills in her hand, final notices for electricity, water, and her mother's medication, might as well have been death sentences. Jamie? Her mother's voice drifted from the bedroom, weak and papery. Is that you, sweetheart? Yeah, Mom. Jamie forced brightness into her voice as she unlocked the door. Just checking the mail. Linda Cross looked smaller every day, as if the cancer was eating her from the inside out. She sat propped up in bed, her once beautiful auburn hair now thin and gray from chemotherapy. But her green eyes, Jamie's eyes, still held that spark of stubborn determination that had carried them through Jamie's father's death 12 years ago. Any word from the garage interviews? Jamie had spent the morning hitting every auto shop in a 50-mile radius. The story was always the same: they'd start interested, then make a phone call, and suddenly the position was filled. Still waiting to hear back, Jamie lied smoothly. She couldn't tell her mother that Murphy had poisoned every well in town. Rest now. I'm going to make some calls. But there were no more calls to make. Jamie sat at their tiny kitchen table, staring at her phone and the growing list of rejections. Murphy's reach extended further than she'd imagined. The old bastard had made sure she'd never work on a legitimate car again. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Martinez's office. Payment required before next chemo session. Please call to discuss payment options. Jamie's hands shook as she set the phone down. Payment options. Like she hadn't already pawned everything worth selling, hadn't already taken out loans she couldn't repay. The knock on the door made her jump. Through the peephole, she saw a woman with silver hair and too pale skin, wearing a long black coat despite the October heat. Jamie had never seen her before, but something about her made Jamie's wolf pace restlessly. Can I help you? I hope so. The woman's accent carried a trace of something old, European maybe. I'm told you're a mechanic. I have a vehicle that needs special attention. Jamie opened the door wider, hope fluttering in her chest. What kind of vehicle? The woman smiled, revealing teeth just a little too sharp. A 1967 Jaguar E-Type. Beautiful machine, but she's been having some trouble with her electrical system. The previous mechanic said it was impossible to fix. Nothing's impossible. Just expensive. Jamie grabbed her jacket. Where is it? 20 minutes later, Jamie stood in a warehouse on the wrong side of town, staring at the most beautiful car she'd ever seen. The Jaguar was pristine midnight black with red leather interior, and when she popped the hood, she understood why the previous mechanic had given up. Someone had retrofitted the engine with components she'd never seen before. They hummed with an energy that made her skin crawl and her wolf whine in distress. Unique, isn't it? The woman, she'd introduced herself as Celeste, watched Jamie with predatory interest. I acquired her from a collector in Prague. He assured me she was fully functional. Jamie ran her hands along the strange components, feeling their otherness. Not quite metal, not quite organic. Magic. Had to be. I can fix her, Jamie said, surprised by her own certainty. But it'll take time. And it won't be cheap. Money is no object. Celeste's smile widened. I pay very well for discretion and quality work. 3 hours later, Jamie had $500 in cash and a car that purred like a satisfied cat. She'd never worked with magical components before, but her hands seemed to know what to do, as if the Omega in her recognized the supernatural elements and adapted. Word traveled fast in the supernatural underground. By the end of the week, Jamie had fixed a Fey Lord's vintage Mustang, the carburetor had been cursed, a vampire's motorcycle, silver poisoning in the fuel lines, and a witch's delivery van, hexed ignition system. She worked out of abandoned warehouses and back alley garages, always cash only, always after dark. It wasn't honest work, not exactly, but it kept the lights on and her mother's medication flowing. She was elbow deep in a werewolf pack's SUV when she heard the familiar rumble of a Harley. Jamie's blood went cold. She'd been careful, staying off Murphy's radar, but if word got back to him about her supernatural clients. The rider who walked into the warehouse wasn't Murphy. He was almost as big as Ryder Blackwood, with the same dangerous edge, but his hair was lighter and his eyes blue instead of gray. The Hells Angels patch on his leather vest read, Vice President. You Jamie Cross? His voice carried the same authority as Ryder's, but warmer somehow. Depends who's asking. She wiped her hands on a rag, fighting the urge to run. Knox Blackwood. Ryder's my brother. He looked around the dingy warehouse, taking in the supernatural clients who melted back into the shadows. Heard you got screwed over by Murphy. Jamie's jaw tightened. What's it to you? Ryder's been looking for you. Wanted to make things right. Little late for that. The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. I'm managing fine on my own. Knox's eyes narrowed as he took in her oil-stained clothes, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she held herself like she was ready to bolt. This what fine looks like. Better than being Murphy's whipping girl. Murphy won't be a problem much longer. Knox's smile was sharp as a blade. Turns out he's been cutting corners on safety inspections. State's real interested in that. Jamie blinked. We take care of our own. And anyone who helps our own. He pulled out a business card, plain white with just a phone number. Ryder wants to offer you a job. Real job, not this underground bullshit. I don't work for criminals. Knox laughed, a sound without humor. Lady, half your current clients would make us look like choir boys. At least we're honest about what we are. He had a point. The Fey Lord had paid her with gold that turned to leaves at sunrise. The vampire had tried to mesmerize her into working for free. And the witch, well, the witch had been decent enough, but Jamie had caught her muttering curses under her breath when she thought Jamie wasn't listening. What kind of job, she heard herself ask. Club mechanic. We've got 24 bikes, plus cars and trucks. Pays good, hours are flexible, and you'd have your own garage. Knox leaned against the werewolf's SUV. Medical benefits too. Full coverage. Jamie's heart stopped. Medical benefits? Complete package. Covers pre-existing conditions, experimental treatments, the works. Knox's expression softened slightly. Heard your mom's sick. The offer was too good to be true. Had to be a catch. What's the real job? Jamie asked. Because I know it's not just changing oil and rotating tires. Knox studied her for a long moment. Smart girl. You're right, it's not just maintenance. Sometimes our bikes get damaged in ways that require creative solutions. Sometimes we need modifications that help us stay ahead of our enemies. And sometimes we need someone who can work on supernatural vehicles without asking questions. Why me? Because you're good at what you do. Because you're already working the supernatural angle. And because Ryder trusts you. Knox pushed off from the SUV. But mostly because you're Pack. Jamie went very still. I'm not Pack. I'm not anything. Omega who can handle herself around alphas without rolling over? Omega who works on cursed engines without flinching? Omega who'd rather starve than ask for help? Knox shook his head. You're Pack, Jamie. You just haven't found your family yet. The word hit her like a physical blow. Family. She'd been alone for so long, she'd forgotten what that felt like. I need to think about it. Course you do. Knox headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Ryder's been beating himself up about what happened at Murphy's. Man's been riding the roads every night, trying to track you down. After he left, Jamie sat in the silence of the warehouse, surrounded by the scents of motor oil and otherworldly magic. The werewolf whose SUV she'd been fixing emerged from the shadows, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and grease under her fingernails. You should take the job, the woman said quietly. I know the Hell's Angels. They're rough, but they protect their own. And an Omega needs protection in this world. Jamie thought about her mother, wasting away in that tiny apartment. Thought about the medical bills that kept coming, the eviction notice, the way Murphy had destroyed her life with a phone call. Thought about Ryder Blackwood's gray eyes and the way he'd looked at her like she mattered. The benefits package, she said to the empty air. It really covers everything? Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Martinez. Jamie, please call. Your mother's condition is worsening. We need to discuss treatment options immediately. Jamie stared at Knox's business card, then at the supernatural clients who paid in fool's gold and empty promises. She'd been surviving on scraps, telling herself she was independent, but independence didn't pay for chemotherapy. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. With shaking fingers, she dialed the number on the card. Knox answered on the first ring. Made a decision? Tell Ryder I'll take the job, Jamie said, the words burning her throat. But I have conditions. Name them. I work for the club, not for him personally. My mother gets treatment, no questions asked. And if anyone tries to mess with me because I'm Omega, I walk. Done. Knox's voice carried satisfaction. Welcome to the Hell's Angels, Jamie Cross. After she hung up, Jamie sat in her beat-up Honda outside the warehouse, watching the city lights blur through tears she refused to shed. She just sold her independence to a motorcycle club, put herself at the mercy of alphas who could destroy her with a word. But her mother would live. And maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found a place where being Omega didn't make her prey. The thought terrified her almost as much as it gave her hope. Chapter 3. The Hells Angels compound looked like a fortress designed to keep the world out and the wolves in. Jamie sat in her Honda outside the massive steel gates, second-guessing every decision that had brought her here. 20-foot walls topped with razor wire stretched around the property, broken only by guard towers that probably weren't just for show. The gate itself was reinforced steel, and she could see the camera arrays tracking her every move. Her phone buzzed. Knox's voice came through tinny but clear. "You coming in, or you planning to sit out there all day?" The gates rumbled open with mechanical precision. Jamie drove through, feeling like she was crossing into another world entirely. The compound sprawled across several acres, all concrete and steel buildings arranged around a central courtyard. Motorcycles gleamed in neat rows, everything from vintage Harleys to modern sport bikes. Men in leather vests moved between the buildings with predatory grace, and Jamie's wolf whimpered as alpha scents hit her in overwhelming waves. Knox waited by the main building, his arms crossed and an amused smile on his face. "Welcome to the Devil's Playground." Jamie climbed out of her car, fighting the urge to get right back in and drive away. "It's bigger than I expected. We like our space." Knox gestured toward a building at the far end of the compound. "That's your garage. Fully equipped, parts supply, the works. Your apartment's upstairs." As they walked, Jamie became aware of the attention they were drawing. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. The scent of curiosity and suspicion followed them like a cloud. "They don't seem happy to see me. They'll get used to you. Or they won't." Knox's tone suggested he didn't much care which. Rule 1, respect is earned here, not given. Rule 2, Omega or not, you pull your weight or you're out. Rule 3, Ryder's word is law. The garage was a mechanic's dream. For bays, hydraulic lifts, tool walls that would make a NASCAR crew jealous. Jamie ran her hands along a workbench, feeling some of her tension ease. This was familiar territory. Impressed? Jamie turned to find a man watching her from the doorway. He was built like Knox and Ryder, all muscle and menace, but his dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail and his eyes held a coldness that made her skin crawl. The patch on his vest read, "Lieutenant." "You must be Vega." Knox's voice had gone carefully neutral. Vega stepped into the garage, his presence filling the space like smoke. "So this is Murphy's little Omega. Not much to look at." Jamie straightened her spine. She'd dealt with men like this her whole life, alphas who thought Omega meant weak. "I'm here to work, not win beauty contests." "Work?" Vega's laugh held no humor. "Right. How long you think you'll last when the first real alpha decides he wants what you're offering?" "I'm not offering anything." "Sure you're not." Vega moved closer, using his size to intimidate. Little Omega shows up, gets handed the best garage in the compound, special treatment from the boss. What's a girl gotta do to earn perks like that? The insult hit like a slap, but before Jamie could respond, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Got a problem, Vega?" Ryder filled the doorway like an avenging angel. He was bigger than Jamie remembered, more dangerous, and the fury rolling off him in waves made every instinct she had scream at her to submit. But she held her ground, even as her wolf tried to roll belly up. Vega stepped back, but his challenge didn't waver. "Just getting acquainted with our new employee." Ryder's gray eyes flicked to Jamie, and she caught something that might have been concern before his expression went blank again. "Jamie, you need anything, you ask Knox. Anyone gives you trouble, you tell Knox. Anyone bothers you after hours, you call this number." He handed her a business card with a different number than Knox had given her. "Any questions?" "About 1,000, starting with why he was treating her like a stranger when 3 nights ago they'd shared enough heat to melt steel. But Vega was watching, and Jamie had enough sense to know this was pack business, alpha politics she didn't understand. No questions. Ryder nodded once and walked away, leaving Jamie alone with Vega's smirk and Knox's apologetic shrug. "Don't take it personal," Knox said after Vega disappeared. "Ryder's got his reasons for keeping distance." "What reasons?" Knox's expression shuddered. "Not my story to tell. But the man's got ghosts, and they make him careful around Omegas." 2 hours later, Jamie had moved her few possessions into the surprisingly spacious apartment above the garage. The place came furnished, clean, and best of all, paid for. She'd already called Dr. Martinez's office and gotten her mother scheduled for the next round of treatment. For the first time in months, she could breathe without feeling like she was drowning. The feeling lasted exactly until she started her first official inspection of the club's fleet. Jamie had worked on enough vehicles to know the difference between normal wear and deliberate damage. What she found in the third Harley made her blood run cold. The brake lines had been scored with something sharp, not enough to cause immediate failure, but enough to ensure they'd snap under hard pressure. The oil drain plug had been loosened just enough to cause a catastrophic leak after a few miles. And the throttle cable. Jamie sat back on her heels, staring at the nearly severed cable. Someone had done this deliberately, carefully, in a way that would look like random mechanical failure. Someone wanted the rider of this bike dead. She moved to the next motorcycle, then the next. Same pattern of sabotage, subtle but lethal. By the time she'd checked a dozen bikes, her hands were shaking. Someone was trying to kill the pack leadership. Find something interesting? Jamie spun around to find Vega watching her, his arms crossed and his smile sharp as a knife. "These bikes have been sabotaged." She gestured to the evidence she'd laid out: scored brake lines, loosened bolts, damaged cables. "Someone's trying to murder your officers." Vega's smile didn't waver. "That's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation. It's fact." Jamie stood, wiping her hands on her coveralls. "Every bike I've checked has been tampered with. Professional job too, whoever did this knows motorcycles." "Interesting theory." Vega moved closer, and Jamie caught something in his scent that made her wolf snarl. Guilt. Fear. Triumph. "Got any proof it wasn't you?" Omega shows up, suddenly bikes start braking. Convenient timing. The accusation hit her like a physical blow. "You think I think you're exactly what you appear to be. An opportunist who'll do anything for money." Vega's voice dropped to a whisper. "Question is, who's paying you?" Jamie's temper, held in check by years of survival instinct, finally snapped. "You arrogant piece of..." The garage door exploded inward as 3 Harleys roared into the space. Ryder swung off his bike, Knox and another rider behind him, all of them moving with the fluid grace of predators who'd caught a scent. "What's the problem?" Ryder's eyes moved between Jamie and Vega, reading the tension like a book. "Your new mechanic thinks someone's sabotaging our bikes," Vega said smoothly. "Course, she's the only one with access who isn't pack." Ryder looked at the evidence Jamie had laid out, his expression unreadable. "Show me." For the next 20 minutes, Jamie walked him through her findings, pointing out each deliberate flaw, each carefully planned failure point. Ryder asked sharp questions, his knowledge of motorcycles deeper than she'd expected. "How long would these take to fail?" he asked, running his thumb along a scored brake line. "Depends on usage. Under normal conditions, maybe a week. But if you were riding hard, pushing the bike..." Jamie shrugged. "Could happen anytime." "And the pattern?" "Systematic. Someone with access, someone who knows these machines." Jamie looked around the garage, at the security cameras, the locked tool cabinets. "Someone who belongs here." Ryder's jaw clenched, and she saw the moment he reached the same conclusion she had. The sabotage was an inside job. "Vega," Ryder's voice was deadly quiet. "You checked these bikes last week." I did my job. But there was sweat on Vega's forehead now, and his scent had gone sharp with panic. Maybe your Omega here is trying to cover her tracks. My Omega? Ryder's voice dropped another octave, and the air in the garage went electric. She's been here exactly 4 hours. When would she have had time to sabotage a dozen bikes? Vega opened his mouth, then closed it, caught in his own logic. Jamie watched the byplay, understanding dawning like a cold sunrise. Vega hadn't just failed to catch the sabotage. He was the sabotage. It was you, she said quietly. Every eye in the garage turned to her. Jamie swallowed hard, but forced herself to continue. You had access. You knew when the bikes would be ridden and by whom. And you made sure to blame the new Omega, because who's going to believe her over a lieutenant? Vega's facade cracked, revealing something ugly underneath. Prove it. I can. Jamie moved to his personal bike, parked in the place of honor near the office. If you've been sabotaging the others, I'll bet you've been extra careful with your own ride. Let me guess, new brake lines? Fresh oil? Everything in perfect condition while you let your brothers ride death traps. Ryder was already moving, his hands running over Vega's pristine Harley. Jamie was right, everything was new, recently serviced, immaculate. Interesting, Ryder said softly. Care to explain why your bike's the only one in perfect condition? Vega's hand moved toward the knife on his belt, and everything happened at once. Knox stepped left, blocking the exit. The third rider, Jamie caught the name, Tank, on his vest, moved right. And Ryder just smiled, showing teeth that were a little too sharp. Don't, he advised quietly. We're pack, Vega. Family. Don't make me forget that. For a moment, Vega looked like he might fight anyway. Then his shoulders sagged, and Jamie smelled defeat mixing with his fear. The Crimson Serpents made me an offer, he said finally. Territory of my own. Respect. I'm tired of being your lieutenant, Ryder. Tired of living in your shadow. So you decided to kill me instead of just leaving? Leaving would have been seen as weakness. But if you died in an accident? Vega shrugged. Someone would have to step up. Ryder nodded slowly, as if Vega's betrayal made perfect sense. Knox, take him to holding. I'll deal with this later. As Knox and Tank escorted a defeated Vega away, Ryder turned to Jamie. For the first time since she'd arrived, his mask slipped, and she saw something that might have been gratitude. Thank you, he said simply. Just doing my job. No. You saved my life. Saved all our lives. He moved closer, and Jamie caught his scent, pine and leather and something uniquely male that made her wolf purr. I owe you. You don't owe me anything. You gave me work, insurance for my mother. We're even. Ryder studied her for a long moment. Are we? Before Jamie could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the compound. Red lights flashed, and she heard the sound of motorcycles firing up in the distance. What's that? Ryder's expression went grim. Trouble. Crimson Serpents are making their move. He strode toward his bike, then paused. Stay here. Lock the garage. Don't open it for anyone but Knox. Where are you going? To end this. Jamie watched him fire up his Harley, the engine roaring with perfect precision thanks to her work. He was riding into danger, and every instinct she had screamed at her to stop him. Instead, she ran for her own bike. She caught up with Ryder and his pack at the compound gates, where Knox was shouting orders and men were checking weapons. The Crimson Serpents had blocked the main road with stolen cars, turning the area into a war zone. I told you to stay back, Ryder shouted over the noise. And I told you I don't take orders well, Jamie shouted back. Besides, you need someone watching your six. Before he could argue, gunfire erupted from the roadblock. Bullets spanged off concrete and steel as the Hells Angels took cover behind their bikes. We're pinned down, Knox yelled. Can't get close enough to clear the road. Jamie studied the tactical situation, her mind automatically calculating angles and distances. She'd grown up in this neighborhood, knew every back road and alley. "There's another way," she called to Ryder. "Service road that runs parallel. You could flank them." "Show me." What followed was the most terrifying 15 minutes of Jamie's life. Racing through narrow alleys at speeds that would have been suicidal in daylight, weaving between abandoned buildings while gunfire echoed behind them. Ryder stayed close, trusting her to lead, and Jamie felt something shift between them, a partnership that went deeper than employer and employee. They emerged behind the Crimson Serpent roadblock just as the enemy was repositioning to counter Knox's frontal assault. Jamie pointed to a gap in their formation, and Ryder nodded, understanding her strategy immediately. The Hells Angels hit the roadblock from both sides simultaneously, catching the Serpents in a crossfire that ended the battle in minutes. By the time the smoke cleared, half the enemy was down and the rest were fleeing into the night. Ryder found Jamie in the aftermath, checking over her bike with shaking hands. Adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her raw and shaky. "You okay?" His voice was gentler than she'd heard it. "Fine. Just..." She gestured vaguely at the chaos around them. "Not used to people shooting at me." "Get used to it. This life, it comes with enemies." He paused, studying her face in the dim light. "You sure you want to be part of this?" Jamie thought about her alternatives. Thought about her mother, safe in a hospital bed with the best care money could buy. Thought about the garage, the apartment, the first real home she'd had in years. Thought about the way Ryder had trusted her to lead him through enemy territory, the way his pack had accepted her skills if not her presence. "I'm sure." Ryder nodded once, and Jamie caught something in his expression that hadn't been there before. Respect, maybe. Or the beginning of something deeper. "Good," he said quietly. "Because we're just getting started." As they rode back to the compound, Jamie realized she'd crossed a line tonight. She wasn't just the club mechanic anymore. She was part of this, part of them, whether they liked it or not. The Wolf's Den had claimed her, and for the first time in her life, Jamie Cross wasn't sure she wanted to escape. Chapter 4. The silver nitrate test turned the metal shavings black within seconds. Jamie stared at the results, her stomach churning with implications she didn't want to face. She'd scraped samples from the sabotaged brake lines, the damaged throttle cables, every piece of evidence from Vega's handiwork. All of it came back positive for silver contamination. Not just any silver. Weapons-grade silver, refined and concentrated in a way that would be lethal to werewolves on contact. "Son of a bitch," she whispered, understanding flooding through her like ice water. This wasn't just sabotage. It was assassination, planned and executed with surgical precision. A knock on the garage door made her jump. She quickly swept the test materials into a drawer before hitting the button to raise the door. Ryder stood silhouetted against the morning sun, 2 cups of coffee in his hands and something that might have been concern in his gray eyes. "Figured you might need caffeine," he said, offering her a cup. "You've been in here since dawn." Jamie accepted the coffee gratefully, inhaling the rich scent. "Just following up on the sabotage. Making sure we didn't miss anything." "Find something?" She hesitated. The smart play was to tell him everything, let the pack handle it. But the evidence pointed to connections beyond the compound, connections that might put her mother at risk if the wrong people found out what she knew. Maybe. Still running tests. Ryder studied her face, reading the evasion like a book. Jamie. The way he said her name, soft and commanding at the same time, made her wolf whimper with the urge to submit. To tell him everything, let him shoulder the burden, trust him to protect her. Instead, she took a sip of coffee and changed the subject. "Shouldn't you be running the club? Making alpha decisions or whatever it is you do all day?" A smile ghosted across his mouth. "Whatever it is I do all day." "Right." He moved closer, and Jamie caught his scent, pine and leather and something uniquely male that made her pulse kick. "As it happens, one of the things I do is make sure my people can protect themselves. I can protect myself fine. Can you? He gestured toward the compound beyond the garage doors. You saved my life last night, but you also put yourself in danger doing it. What happens next time when I'm not there to watch your back? Jamie bristled. I don't need a babysitter. No, you don't. But you need training. Ryder's expression went serious. This isn't Murphy's garage, Jamie. The people who want us dead won't hesitate to use you against us. And right now, you're a liability. The words stung, mostly because they were true. So what are you suggesting? Self-defense lessons. Pack dynamics. How to read supernatural threats before they read you. He paused. Starting now. An hour later, Jamie found herself in the compound's training facility, wearing workout clothes that Knox had somehow procured in her exact size. The space looked like a cross between a gym and a dojo, all mats and mirrors and weapons that probably weren't legal in most states. Ryder had changed too, trading his leather for fitted black pants and a tank top that did interesting things to his shoulders. Jamie tried not to stare and failed miserably. First lesson, he said, moving to the center of the mat. Werewolf senses are enhanced, but they're not perfect. We rely on scent, sound, movement patterns. Change those variables, and you can level the playing field. How? Attack me. Jamie blinked. What? Come at me like you mean it. Try to hurt me. I'm not going to attack you. Ryder's smile was sharp as a blade. Why not? Afraid you'll lose? The challenge in his voice made her wolf snarl. Before she could think better of it, Jamie lunged forward, aiming for his solar plexus. He sidestepped her easily, caught her wrist, and spun her around until her back was pressed against his chest and her arm was pinned behind her. Lesson 1, he murmured against her ear, his breath warm on her neck. Never attack angry. Anger makes you predictable. Jamie's heart hammered against her ribs, and not just from exertion. Ryder's body was solid heat behind her, all muscle and controlled power, and she could feel his pulse matching hers beat for frantic beat. Let me go. Ask nicely. Let me go, please. He released her immediately, stepping back with what might have been regret. Again. This time, think before you move. They sparred for another hour, and Jamie learned that Ryder was a patient teacher when he wasn't being an arrogant alpha. He showed her how to use an attacker's momentum against them, how to target vulnerable points, how to break free from holds that should have been impossible to escape. By the end of the session, she was sweating and breathless, but she'd actually managed to land a few hits. Not bad, Ryder said, toweling sweat from his neck. You learn fast. Good teacher. The compliment slipped out before she could stop it, and Jamie felt heat rise in her cheeks. Ryder went very still, his nostrils flaring slightly. Jamie realized with horror that her scent had betrayed her, omega arousal, sharp and unmistakable in the confined space. Jamie. His voice had gone rough, dangerous. I should go. She grabbed her water bottle, not meeting his eyes. Got work to do. She was almost to the door when he spoke again. Same time tomorrow. It wasn't a question. Back in the garage, Jamie threw herself into work, trying to forget the way Ryder's hands had felt on her skin, the way his scent had made her wolf purr with want. She had bigger problems than inconvenient attraction to her boss. The silver contamination results haunted her. Someone had gone to considerable expense and effort to obtain weapons-grade silver, then use it in a way that would look like mechanical failure. The kind of planning that required resources, connections, and intimate knowledge of werewolf physiology. She pulled up the files she'd started building on her supernatural clients, cross-referencing dates and locations. The pattern that emerged made her blood run cold. Every job she'd taken in the underground had been connected somehow to Murphy's garage. Parts ordered through his suppliers. Work performed on vehicles that had been serviced at his shop. Even the warehouse locations, all owned by companies that did business with Murphy. He'd been watching her, tracking her movements, using her to map the supernatural community. But why? Murphy was human, small-time, more interested in skimming profits than grand conspiracies. Unless... Jamie's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Dr. Martinez's name flashed on the screen, and ice flooded her veins. Jamie? The doctor's voice was carefully controlled. I need you to come in. Your mother's taken a turn. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of traffic lights and desperate prayers. Jamie found Dr. Martinez waiting in the hallway outside her mother's room, her expression grave. What happened? Her white cell count has dropped dramatically. The chemo isn't working anymore. Dr. Martinez chose her words carefully. We've run out of conventional options. Jamie's world tilted sideways. What does that mean? It means we need to discuss quality of life issues. Hospice care. Making her comfortable for. The doctor trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. How long? Weeks, maybe less. Jamie sank into a nearby chair, feeling like she'd been punched in the gut. Her mother was dying, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. There is one possibility, Dr. Martinez said quietly. Experimental treatment. Gene therapy that's shown promise in similar cases. But it's not covered by insurance, and the cost. How much? $200,000. Minimum. The number hit Jamie like a physical blow. Even with her Hell's Angels salary and benefits, that kind of money might as well have been $1 million. I need to see her. Her mother looked smaller than ever in the hospital bed, her skin pale as paper and her breathing shallow. But her eyes were alert when Jamie entered, and she managed to smile. There's my girl. You look tired. Jamie forced brightness into her voice. Just working hard. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck. Linda's smile faltered. The doctor told me about the treatment options. Or lack thereof. Don't talk like that. We'll figure something out. Jamie. Her mother's voice was gentle but firm. We both know there's no money for miracles. I've made peace with this. Well, I haven't. Jamie gripped her mother's hand, feeling how fragile the bones had become. There's a treatment. Experimental, but it could work. Sweetheart. No. Jamie's voice broke. I'm not giving up on you. I won't. She stayed until visiting hours ended, holding her mother's hand and making promises she had no idea how to keep. The drive back to the compound passed in a haze of desperation and fury. Ryder was waiting in the garage when she returned, leaning against her workbench with his arms crossed. One look at her face and his expression softened. What happened? The kindness in his voice was her undoing. Jamie tried to hold it together, tried to maintain the facade of independence that had carried her this far. Instead, she found herself telling him everything: the failed treatments, the experimental gene therapy, the impossible cost. 200,000, she finished, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do. Ryder was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the fluorescent light. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. What if the money wasn't a problem? Jamie's head snapped up. What do you mean? I mean, what if someone could cover the cost? Hypothetically. I can't accept charity. Especially not from. She gestured vaguely at the compound around them. From criminals? From people who'd expect something in return. Jamie met his eyes. Nothing's free, Ryder. What would you want from me? Nothing you're not already giving. His voice dropped to a whisper. Your loyalty. Your skills. Your presence in this pack. That's not enough to justify $200,000. It is to me. The words hung between them, charged with meanings Jamie wasn't ready to examine. Before she could respond, Knox appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. We've got a problem, he announced. The other Alpha leaders want a meeting. Tonight. Ryder's jaw tightened. About? About your judgment being compromised by a pretty Omega. Knox's eyes flicked to Jamie apologetically. Their words, not mine. Let me guess. Damon's leading the charge? Him and Marcus both. They're saying you're making decisions with your dick instead of your brain. Jamie felt heat flood her cheeks. Maybe I should. Stay, Ryder said firmly. This concerns you too. Knox shifted uncomfortably. There's more. Word is spreading about the Omega who helped take down the serpents. Some of the pack are saying she's too valuable to risk in the field. Others are saying she's too dangerous to trust. And what are you saying? Ryder's voice carried the edge of command. I'm saying she proved herself last night. But politics is politics, and right now, your relationship with her is being seen as a weakness. Relationship. The word made Jamie's wolf preen even as her rational mind recoiled. They didn't have a relationship. They had unresolved tension, dangerous attraction, and a professional arrangement that was getting more complicated by the hour. When's the meeting? Ryder asked. 1 hour. Main conference room. After Knox left, Ryder turned to Jamie, his expression unreadable. This is what I was trying to protect you from. Pack politics? Alpha politics. Power struggles. Men who see Omega as either prize or threat, nothing in between. He moved closer, and Jamie caught his scent, pine and leather and frustration. I should have kept more distance. Should have, could have. Jamie shrugged, trying for casualness. Too late now. Is it? His gray eyes searched her face. I could still transfer you to another chapter. Somewhere safer. The offer should have been tempting. Less dangerous, fewer complications, a chance to avoid the mess her life was becoming. Instead, it felt like a betrayal. Is that what you want? She asked quietly. What I want has nothing to do with this. Humor me. Ryder was quiet for so long Jamie thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. I want you safe. I want your mother healthy. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're here, in this garage, working on these machines. He paused. I want things I have no right to want. Jamie's heart stopped, then kicked back into overdrive. Ryder. But what I want doesn't matter. What matters is keeping you alive and keeping this pack together. His expression shuddered. So I'll ask again. Do you want the transfer? Jamie thought about her mother, dying in a hospital bed. Thought about the experimental treatment, the impossible cost, the promise she'd made. Thought about the silver-laced weapons and the conspiracy she'd uncovered, the danger that was coming whether she stayed or ran. Thought about the way Ryder had looked at her during training, the heat in his eyes, the careful distance he maintained even when every instinct screamed at them both to close the gap. No, she said finally. I don't want the transfer. Even knowing what it might cost? Especially knowing what it might cost. Jamie met his eyes steadily. I'm not running anymore, Ryder. Not from this, not from you, not from whatever's coming. Something shifted in his expression, pride mixing with fear and something deeper that made her wolf howl with recognition. Then we'd better get ready for war, he said quietly. Because after tonight, there's no going back. As if summoned by his words, the sound of motorcycles filled the evening air, alphas arriving for the meeting that would determine Jamie's fate, and maybe the fate of the entire pack. Jamie looked around the garage that had become her sanctuary, at the man who'd become so much more than her employer, and felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders like a mantle. The secrets in steel had led her here, to this moment, this choice. She just hoped she was strong enough for what came next. Chapter 5. The Alpha meeting had gone worse than Jamie expected. She stood outside the conference room, her enhanced hearing picking up every word through the supposedly soundproof walls. Damon's voice carried the weight of centuries, each syllable dripping with authority and contempt. The Omega is a liability, Ryder. She's made you weak, distracted. The Crimson Serpents nearly took you out because you were too busy protecting her to focus on strategy. She saved our asses, Knox argued, but his protest sounded hollow against the weight of Alpha disapproval. Once, Marcus snapped. That doesn't erase the risk she represents. Omegas belong in safe houses, not war zones. Jamie's hands clenched into fists. Safe houses. Like prisons with better decorating. The decision is mine, Ryder's voice cut through the debate like steel. She stays. And if the pack votes no confidence? Damon's challenge was silk-wrapped steel. What then, old friend? The silence that followed made Jamie's stomach churn. Pack law was absolute. If the alphas lost faith in their leader, they could remove him. And a deposed alpha rarely lived long enough to regret his fall. She was so focused on the meeting that she almost missed the subtle change in the compound's atmosphere. The night air carried scents that didn't belong, cold stone, old blood, and something that made her wolf whimper in recognition. Vampires. Jamie pressed herself against the wall, trying to process what her senses were telling her. Multiple vampires, moving with the predatory silence that only came with centuries of practice. They were inside the compound's walls, past security that should have been impenetrable. Someone had let them in. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, *garage. Now. Come alone or everyone dies, *. Jamie's blood turned to ice. She looked toward the conference room where Ryder and the other alphas were locked in political warfare, oblivious to the real threat surrounding them. The garage felt different when she entered, charged with malevolent energy that made her skin crawl. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across familiar equipment, and the smell of vampire was overwhelming. Punctual. I appreciate that in an employee. Jamie spun toward the voice and found herself face to face with Celeste, the vampire who'd been her first supernatural client. But gone was the elegant facade. Now she looked like what she truly was. Predator. Ancient. Deadly. Let me guess, Jamie said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Murphy's garage was never about fixing cars. Very good. Celeste's smile revealed fangs like ivory daggers. Murphy has been quite useful, feeding us information about the local supernatural community. Your little repair jobs gave us access to vehicles, locations, schedules. Everything we needed to plan tonight's festivities. Tonight's what? The end of werewolf protection in this territory. Celeste gestured to the shadows around the garage, and Jamie caught glimpses of movement, vampires positioning themselves like chess pieces. With Ryder's pack eliminated, we'll control every supernatural enterprise from here to the coast. You're insane. You can't take on an entire werewolf pack. Can't we? Celeste's laugh was like breaking glass. It's the new moon, little Omega. Your precious alphas are barely stronger than humans right now. And we have advantages they don't know about. As if summoned by her words, Vega stepped out of the shadows. Jamie's heart sank as she saw the truth written in his posture, his scent, the satisfied smirk on his face. Hello, Jamie. Miss me? You son of a bitch. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. The sabotage. The silver weapons. You've been working with them all along. Smart girl. Vega moved closer, and Jamie caught the scent of vampire on his clothes, in his hair. He'd been feeding them information for months. Did you really think my betrayal was about territory? About respect? Then what? Survival. His expression hardened. The supernatural world is changing. Werewolves had their time, but that time is ending. Better to be on the winning side when the dust settles. Celeste's phone buzzed, and her smile widened. My people are in position. The conference room is surrounded, the exits blocked. In exactly 3 minutes, every alpha in that room will be dead. Jamie's mind raced, calculating distances and possibilities. 3 minutes to save Ryder and his pack. 3 minutes to stop a massacre. What do you want from me? Your cooperation, Celeste said smoothly. You've seen our strength, our planning. Join us willingly, and we'll make your death quick. Resist, and what? You'll kill me slowly? Jamie forced a laugh. Either way, I'm dead. Not much incentive to cooperate. She was stalling for time, her hands moving casually toward the workbench where she'd left her tools. If she could create enough chaos, maybe the alphas would have a chance to fight back. 2 minutes, Celeste announced. Jamie's fingers closed around a wrench, and she made her choice. The wrench flew across the garage and shattered the main electrical panel in a shower of sparks. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in hellish red light as alarms began shrieking throughout the compound. Chaos erupted instantly. Vampires hissed and cursed as their night vision was compromised, and Jamie heard the conference room door slam open as the alphas responded to the warning. Kill her. Celeste snarled. Jamie was already moving, diving behind a hydraulic lift as vampires converged on her position. Her hands found the garage's manual controls, and she began activating every system at once, lifts rising and falling, air compressors engaging, power tools roaring to life. The garage became a mechanical war zone, steel and machinery against supernatural speed. Jamie used every inch of knowledge she'd gained working these machines, turning her sanctuary into a fortress of moving parts and crushing weight. A vampire tried to flank her around a motorcycle, and Jamie triggered the lift he was standing on. 2 tons of steel and chrome pinned him to the ceiling, his screams mixing with the mechanical chaos. Where are you, little Omega? Vega's voice carried over the noise, closer than she'd expected. You can't hide forever. Jamie grabbed a spray bottle of brake fluid and a lighter from her workbench. When Vega rounded the corner, she sprayed him down and flicked the lighter. The beta lieutenant went up like a torch, his screams adding to the cacophony as he rolled on the floor, trying to extinguish the flames. Impressive, Celeste appeared behind Jamie like smoke, moving faster than human eyes could track. But ultimately pointless. Before Jamie could react, cold fingers wrapped around her throat, lifting her off the ground with inhuman strength. Jamie clawed at Celeste's grip, her vision beginning to darken as her air supply was cut off. The garage door exploded inward as Ryder and his pack arrived like an army of avenging angels. Even weakened by the new moon, they moved with coordinated violence that spoke of decades fighting together. Ryder's roar of fury shook the building as he saw Jamie in Celeste's grip. He shifted partially, his human form gaining claws and fangs, his eyes blazing with inhuman rage. Let her go. I don't think so. Celeste's grip tightened, and Jamie felt her consciousness slipping. Call off your dogs, or I snap her pretty little neck. You're going to die anyway, Ryder said conversationally, stalking closer despite the threat. Question is whether it's quick or whether I take my time. Nox and the other alphas were engaging the remaining vampires, the garage becoming a battlefield of supernatural fury. But Jamie's attention was fixed on Vega, who had managed to extinguish the flames and was now pulling a silver knife from his boot. She tried to warn Ryder, but Celeste's grip had crushed her larynx. All she could manage was a strangled whisper. Vega moved like lightning, the silver blade aimed at Ryder's back. Jamie did the only thing she could. She bit down on Celeste's wrist with every ounce of strength she possessed. The vampire shrieked and released her, Jamie dropping to the floor gasping for air. But her warning came too late. Vega's blade slid between Ryder's ribs like it was meant to be there, silver burning through werewolf flesh with the sound of sizzling meat. Ryder stumbled, his partial shift dissolving as the poison spread through his system. Ryder. Jamie's scream tore from her damaged throat as she watched him fall. Finally, Vega panted, his face a ruin of burned flesh and bitter triumph. Finally, I get to watch you die. But Ryder wasn't finished yet. Even poisoned, even dying, he was still an alpha. His hand shot out and caught Vega by the throat, lifting the smaller man off his feet. Any last words? Ryder's voice was steady despite the silver eating him alive from the inside. Yeah. Vega's smile was twisted with pain and satisfaction. She's next. The sound of Vega's neck snapping was sharp and final in the sudden silence. Ryder dropped the body and swayed on his feet, his face gray with pain and blood loss. Around them, the battle was ending. The vampires were dead or fled, their ambush turned into a rout by superior numbers and desperate fury. But victory felt hollow as Jamie watched silver poison work its way through Ryder's system. Knox, Ryder's voice was getting weaker. Secure the compound. Make sure. He never finished the sentence. The Alpha collapsed, his massive frame hitting the concrete with a sound like falling timber. Jamie was at his side instantly, her hands moving over his chest, trying to assess the damage. The silver blade had missed his heart by inches, but the poison was spreading, turning his veins black beneath his skin. Get him to the medical bay, she ordered, her voice raw but carrying authority that made the other Alphas move without question. Jamie. Ryder's eyes fluttered open as they lifted him onto a stretcher. The silver. I know. I'll figure something out. No. His hand caught hers, his grip surprisingly strong. If I don't make it. You're going to make it. If I don't, he continued stubbornly, promise me you'll leave. Go somewhere safe. Let Knox protect you. Jamie stared down at him, this impossible man who'd given her a home, a purpose, a reason to fight. Who'd offered to save her mother without asking for anything in return. Who looked at her like she was worth dying for. I'm not going anywhere, she said firmly. You're stuck with me, Alpha. Better get used to it. A smile ghosted across his lips. Stubborn Omega. Stubborn Alpha. But even as she held his hand, Jamie could see the silver poison spreading, could smell death approaching like smoke on the wind. The pack's doctor was good, but he wasn't equipped to handle silver poisoning of this magnitude. Unless. Knox, she called, her mind already working through possibilities. I need you to make some calls. What kind of calls? Jamie looked down at Ryder's pale face, at the man who'd become so much more than her employer, her Alpha, her salvation. The man who might be dying because he tried to protect her. The kind that might get us both killed, she said quietly. But it's the only chance we have. As they rushed Ryder to the medical bay, Jamie began planning the most desperate gamble of her life. She'd saved his pack tonight with steel and fire and mechanical knowledge. Now she'd have to save him with something far more dangerous. She'd have to trust him with the truth. Chapter 6. The silver was winning. Jamie sat beside Ryder's bed in the medical bay, watching poison spread through his veins like black lightning. Dr. Hayes, the pack's physician, had done everything he could, for fluids, pain medication, blood transfusions, but they all knew the truth. Silver poisoning in werewolves was a death sentence, slow and agonizing. How long? She asked quietly. Hayes checked his watch with the grim precision of a man who delivered too much bad news. At this rate of spread, maybe 6 hours. 8 if we're lucky. 6 hours. Jamie stared at Ryder's face, pale and drawn even in unconsciousness. His breathing was shallow, labored, and she could smell death approaching like smoke on the wind. There has to be something, she insisted. Some treatment, some cure. There isn't. Hayes's voice was gentle but final. I'm sorry, Jamie. Silver poisoning isn't like other injuries. It attacks the very essence of what makes us werewolf. Knox appeared in the doorway, his expression haggard. Any change? He's dying. The words tore from Jamie's throat like broken glass. And there's nothing we can do about it. Actually, a new voice said from behind Knox, there might be. Jamie looked up to find Marcus, one of the Alphas from the meeting, studying Ryder with clinical interest. His scent carried old knowledge, ancient secrets, and something that made her wolf stir restlessly. What do you mean? Knox demanded. Marcus moved closer to the bed, his nostrils flaring as he assessed Ryder's condition. Silver poisoning attacks the werewolf essence, yes. But what if that essence could be reinforced? Shared? You're talking about a mating bond, Hayes said slowly. But Ryder's unconscious. He can't consent to. I'll consent for him. Every eye in the room turned to Jamie. She stood slowly, her decision crystallizing like ice in her veins. I'll mate with him. Tonight. The silence was deafening. Knox was the first to find his voice. Jamie, you don't understand what you're saying. A mating bond with a dying alpha, it could kill you both. It could also save him. She met Marcus's eyes. That's what you're suggesting, isn't it? That a mate bond might give him the strength to fight off the poison? Marcus nodded slowly. The theory is sound. An alpha's mate shares his life force, his power. In return, she gains his protection, his strength. But with Ryder this week. He shrugged. The bonding process could drain what little life he has left. Or it could save him. Jamie looked down at Ryder's still form. What are the odds? Honestly? Maybe 50-50. And that's if everything goes perfectly. Marcus's expression was grave. If it goes wrong, you'll both die. Slowly. Painfully. Jamie thought about her mother, dying in a hospital bed. About the experimental treatment that might save her. About the promise she'd made to never give up fighting. When's the next full moon? Hayes checked his calendar. Tonight. Moonrise is in 4 hours. Perfect timing, if you believed in fate. Jamie wasn't sure she did, but she believed in fighting for what mattered. I need to know how to do this, she said to Marcus. The ritual, the process, everything. Jamie. Knox's voice was tight with worry. Think about this. You're talking about bonding with a man who might not survive the night. I'm talking about saving the man I love. The words hung in the air like a confession, raw and honest and terrifying. Jamie hadn't meant to say them, hadn't even fully acknowledged the truth to herself. But there it was, spoken in front of witnesses, impossible to take back. She loved Ryder Blackwood. The arrogant alpha who'd invaded her garage and turned her world upside down. Who'd given her work, protection, and a place to belong. Who'd looked at her like she was worth dying for. Love him or not, Marcus said quietly, this ritual will change you. Permanently. There's no going back once it's done. I know. Do you? Because if you survive the bonding, you'll be alpha mate to this pack. That comes with responsibilities, expectations, enemies. Are you ready for that? Jamie looked around the room at the faces watching her, Knox's worry, Hayes's professional concern, Marcus's ancient wisdom. These men who'd been strangers 2 weeks ago were now her pack, her family. Worth fighting for. Worth dying for. I'm ready. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus walked her through the ritual requirements while Hayes monitored Ryder's deteriorating condition. The silver had reached his heart, and his pulse was growing weaker by the hour. The bonding must happen at moonrise, Marcus explained as they prepared the ritual space on the compound's roof. The moon's power will strengthen the connection, help your life force merge with his. Candles marked the cardinal directions, their flames dancing in the night breeze. Ancient symbols were carved into the stone floor, filled with a mixture of pack blood and blessed oils. The air hummed with power that made Jamie's skin prickle. What exactly happens? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The ritual begins with an exchange of blood, his essence mixing with yours. Then the physical bonding, while the moon is at its peak. If it works, you'll feel his life force joining with yours. His strength becoming your strength, and vice versa. And if it doesn't work? Marcus's expression was grave. Then you die together. They carried Ryder to the roof as the moon began to rise, his unconscious form a dead weight between 4 pack members. Jamie had changed into a simple white dress that Knox had somehow procured, and her hands shook as she knelt beside Ryder's still form. Are you sure about this? Knox asked one last time. Jamie looked at Ryder's face, peaceful in unconsciousness. She thought about the way he'd smiled at her during training, the heat in his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking. The way he'd offered to save her mother without asking for anything in return. I'm sure. The moon reached its zenith, bathing the roof in silver light. Marcus began the ritual chant in a language older than civilization, his voice carrying power that made the air shimmer. Jamie felt the pack magic stirring, ancient and primal and hungry. Your blood, willingly given, Marcus intoned. Jamie drew the ceremonial knife across her palm, letting her blood drip onto Ryder's lips. The crimson drop seemed to glow in the moonlight, and she felt something respond deep in her chest, her wolf recognizing the beginning of an unbreakable bond. His blood, freely shared. Marcus made a shallow cut on Ryder's palm, guiding Jamie's mouth to the wound. The taste of his blood was copper and fire, flooding her system with power that made her vision blur and her heart race. The pack magic surged, connecting her to every werewolf watching, their combined strength flowing through her like electricity. But underneath it all, she could feel Ryder, faint but still there, his life force flickering like a candle in a storm. The joining, Marcus announced. Let what was two become one. Jamie positioned herself over Ryder's unconscious form, her hands trembling as she guided him inside her. Even unconscious, his body responded to hers, and she felt the first tendrils of the mate bond reaching between them. The moon's power crashed over them like a tidal wave. Jamie screamed as Ryder's essence slammed into hers, too much power for her human-shaped body to contain. She felt her bones creaking, her muscles stretching, her very DNA rewriting itself to accommodate the bond. His memories flooded through her, childhood in the pack, the death of his first mate, years of leadership and loneliness and desperate protection of his people. Below her, Ryder's eyes snapped open, blazing with inhuman light. His hands came up to grip her hips, and she felt his life force surge back from the brink as their bond completed itself. Jamie. Her name was a prayer on his lips as he pulled her down for a kiss that tasted like moonlight and salvation. The silver poison hit their shared bond like acid, trying to destroy the connection before it could fully form. Jamie felt it eating at her from the inside, burning through her veins like liquid fire. But she held on, pouring her own life force into the bond, feeding Ryder her strength as he fed her his power. Ancient pack magic rose around them, older than recorded history, as primal as the first wolves who chose to follow humans into firelight and safety. It flowed through their joined bodies, amplifying their bond, transforming what should have been impossible into inevitable truth. The silver poison met the pack magic and burned away like mist before sunrise. Jamie felt the exact moment when Ryder's life force stabilized, when death retreated and healing began. But the magic wasn't finished with them yet. Power poured through Jamie's hands where they touched Ryder's chest, but not just pack magic. Something new, something that made her wolf howl with recognition and terror. Her mechanical intuition, the skill that had kept her alive in Murphy's garage, was changing, evolving, becoming something superhuman. She could feel every machine in the compound, engines, computers, weapons systems. Not just their current state but their entire history, every repair and modification, every moment of stress and breakdown. The knowledge flowed through her like a river, showing her weaknesses that hadn't yet manifested, repairs that would be needed months in the future. What's happening to me? She gasped, overwhelmed by the flood of mechanical awareness. The bond is changing you, Marcus said, wonder in his voice. Making you more than Omega, more than human. I've never seen anything like it. Ryder's hands found her face, his touch anchoring her to the present. I'm here. We're here. Together. The ritual magic began to ebb, leaving them exhausted but alive. Jamie collapsed onto Ryder's chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her ear. The silver poison was gone, burned away by their combined will and pack magic older than civilization. It worked, Knox breathed. Holy shit, it actually worked. Jamie tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every muscle in her body felt like she'd been hit by a truck, and her new mechanical awareness was still overwhelming. She could sense the motorcycles in the compound's garage, the weapons in the armory, even the electronic locks on the gates. Easy, Ryder murmured, his arms tightening around her. The bond needs time to settle. I can feel everything, she whispered. Every machine, every engine. Their histories, their futures. How is that possible? Pack magic chooses how to manifest in each mating, Marcus explained, helping them both to their feet. Your natural mechanical gifts have been amplified by the alpha bond. Enhanced beyond anything we've seen before. Hayes appeared with blankets and medical supplies, his professional mask slipping to show relief. "How do you feel? Both of you?" Ryder flexed his fingers, testing his range of motion. The silver wounds were already healing, pink scars where there had been mortal injuries. "Like I got hit by a semi, but alive. Thanks to her." His gray eyes met Jamie's, and she saw something there that made her breath catch. Love, yes, but also recognition. They were mated now, bonded in ways that went deeper than law or custom. She could feel his emotions like echoes in her own chest, just as he could feel hers. "The pack will want to acknowledge the bonding," Knox said quietly. "Formal ceremony, recognition of Jamie as alpha mate. Later," Ryder said firmly. "Right now, we need to secure the compound. The vampire attack was just the beginning. They'll come again, and next time they'll be better prepared." Jamie nodded, her new mechanical awareness already cataloging the compound's defensive systems, identifying weaknesses that needed to be addressed. Her enhanced abilities showed her exactly how the vampires had bypassed their security, where the gaps were, how to fix them. "I can help with that," she said, surprised by how natural it felt to include herself in pack strategy. "I know exactly what needs to be upgraded." Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his stern features. "Welcome to the pack, alpha mate. I have a feeling things are about to get very interesting." As they made their way down from the roof, Jamie felt the weight of her new position settling on her shoulders like a mantle. She was no longer just the pack mechanic. She was Ryder's mate, part of the leadership, responsible for the safety and well-being of every wolf in the compound. But more than that, her enhanced abilities made her something unprecedented in the supernatural world. A mechanic who could diagnose problems before they happened, who could sense the history and future of any machine she touched. Every vampire coven, every fae court, every supernatural faction that relied on modern technology would want her skills. Would kill to possess them. Jamie looked at Ryder, walking beside her with renewed strength, and felt their new bond humming with shared purpose. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The hunt was just beginning. Chapter 7. The phone call started 3 days after the bonding. Jamie stood in her garage, staring at the latest request, a handwritten letter on parchment that felt older than the building she stood in. The script was elegant, flowing, and the wax seal bore a symbol that made her wolf whimper in recognition. "Another one?" Ryder asked, entering the garage with 2 cups of coffee. The bond between them hummed with contentment at his presence, a constant warmth in her chest that still surprised her. "Sealy Court this time." Jamie accepted the coffee gratefully, inhaling the rich scent. "They want me to calibrate something called a temporal displacement engine for their wild hunt." Ryder's eyebrows rose. "The Fae are asking for help? That's unprecedented." So were the vampires yesterday. And the werewolf pack in Montana the day before that. Jamie gestured to the stack of requests covering her workbench. Word travels fast in the supernatural community. The morning's mail had brought 7 more requests for her services. A vampire coven in New Orleans wanted their vintage Rolls-Royce examined. Apparently it kept stalling at inconvenient moments during territory disputes. A pack in Wyoming needed their entire fleet blessed before a full moon run. Even a group of witches in Salem wanted her to look at their ceremonial machinery. "Everyone wants the miracle mechanic," she continued, sorting through the letters. "The Omega who can diagnose problems before they happen. And how do you feel about that?" Jamie considered the question, her enhanced senses automatically cataloging the health of every machine in the compound. The bond had stabilized her new abilities, making them manageable rather than overwhelming. She could still feel the history and future of any machine she touched, but now it came as useful information rather than painful overload. "Honestly, it's flattering. But also terrifying." She picked up a request from a dragon clan in Nevada. Apparently even ancient creatures needed help with their modern security systems. "I went from unemployed mechanic to supernatural celebrity overnight." "Celebrity with very sharp teeth," Ryder pointed out, moving behind her to wrap his arms around her waist. "Don't forget that part." The warmth of his body against her back made Jamie's wolf purr with contentment. The mating bond had changed everything between them. No more careful distance, no more unspoken tension. Just the deep certainty that they belonged together, two halves of a whole. Speaking of teeth, Jamie said, leaning back against his chest, the Vampire Coven is offering $1 million for a week of my time. Absolutely not. I figured you'd say that. What about the Fae? They're offering, well, I'm not sure what they're offering. The letter just says a boon beyond price. Also no. Fae gifts always come with strings attached. Ryder's arms tightened around her. Besides, you're needed here. The compound security upgrades are only half finished. He was right. Jamie's enhanced abilities had revealed dozens of vulnerabilities in their defenses, outdated cameras with failing circuits, motion sensors that would malfunction within the month, electronic locks that could be bypassed with a paperclip and the right frequency. She'd been working 18-hour days to address everything her new senses had flagged. The Montana Pack is offering something interesting, though, she said, pulling out their letter. Protection Alliance. If we ever need backup, they'll come running. No questions asked. That might be worth considering. Ryder read over her shoulder, his breath warm against her ear. Alpha Rodriguez runs a solid pack. Good reputation, strong territory. Jamie was about to respond when her phone rang. The display showed Dr. Hayes, and ice flooded her veins. Her mother's treatment had been going well. Ryder had quietly arranged for the experimental gene therapy, and Linda Cross was responding better than anyone had dared hope. But phone calls from doctors still made Jamie's heart race. Dr. Hayes? Is everything okay? Jamie, I need you to come to the hospital immediately. The pack doctor's voice was tight with something that might have been fear. Your mother is asking for you. Is she? Just come. Now. And Jamie? Bring Ryder. 20 minutes later, they were racing through the hospital corridors, following Hayes to the isolation ward where her mother was being treated. Jamie's enhanced senses were going haywire. Every machine in the building was calling to her, beeping monitors and humming ventilators creating a symphony of mechanical life. But underneath it all, she sensed something wrong. Something that made her wolf pace restlessly. They found Linda Cross sitting up in bed, looking healthier than she had in months. The gene therapy had restored color to her cheeks and strength to her limbs, but her eyes held a terror that made Jamie's blood run cold. Mom? What's wrong? Linda gripped her daughter's hand with surprising strength. I remember, Jamie. I remember what really made me sick. The cancer. Not cancer. Poison. Linda's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. I've been having dreams, memories coming back. The garage where I used to work, before you were born. Murphy's place. Jamie went very still. You worked for Murphy? 25 years ago. Before he opened the auto shop, he ran an industrial facility. Government contracts, he said. But the machines. Linda shuddered. They weren't normal, Jamie. They hummed with power that felt wrong. Made me sick just being near them. Ryder moved closer, his alpha instincts recognizing a threat. What kind of machines? I don't know. But I was pregnant with you then, and the exposure. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was going crazy. Seeing things, feeling things that couldn't be real. Murphy said it was pregnancy hormones, gave me pills to help with that anxiety. What pills? Hayes demanded, his medical training kicking in. I don't remember the name. But I kept taking them for months after Jamie was born. Until I got too sick to work. Linda squeezed Jamie's hand tighter. The dreams are so clear now. Murphy knew exactly what those machines were doing to me. He was studying the effects, documenting everything. Jamie's enhanced senses suddenly made terrible sense. Her mechanical intuition, her Omega abilities, even her compatibility with supernatural machinery. It had all started in her mother's womb, exposure to cursed technology that had changed her on a genetic level. There's more, Linda continued. In the dreams, I see other women. Other mechanics who worked there. All pregnant, all getting sick, all taking Murphy's pills. The garage door rumbled open downstairs, and Jamie heard the distinctive wheeze of Murphy's truck engine. Her blood turned to ice as familiar footsteps echoed through the hospital corridors. "He's here," she whispered. Murphy appeared in the doorway like a bad memory given flesh. But he wasn't alone. 3 men in expensive suits flanked him, their presence making Jamie's wolf snarl with instinctive fear. Corporate vampires, she realized, not the supernatural kind, but the human variety that fed on power and profit. "Hello, Jamie." "Linda." Murphy's smile was ugly with triumph. "Hope you don't mind the visit. Had to make sure you were both comfortable." Ryder stepped between Murphy and the bed, his presence filling the room with barely contained violence. "Get out. Now. No need for hostility." Murphy gestured to his companions. "I'd like you to meet some associates of mine. Gentlemen from Nexus Corporation. We've been having the most interesting conversations about your wife's new abilities." The man in the center suit stepped forward, tall, thin, with eyes like chips of ice. His business card read Director William Steele, but there was nothing human in his smile. "Ms. Cross, or should I say, Mrs. Blackwood, you've become quite famous in our circles. The Omega who can diagnose mechanical problems before they happen. Quite remarkable. What do you want?" Jamie's voice was steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "Your cooperation," Steele replied smoothly. "Nexus Corporation has been developing supernatural enhancement technology for decades. Your mother was part of our early research program, though she didn't know it at the time." "You poisoned her," Ryder growled, his partial shift beginning as claws extended from his fingertips. "We exposed her to experimental technology that had the happy side effect of creating you." Steele's smile widened. "A second-generation subject with unprecedented abilities. You're worth more to us than you could possibly imagine." Jamie's mind raced, connecting dots she'd been too blind to see. The supernatural underground jobs. "You were tracking me, weren't you? Using Murphy to monitor my development." "Very good. We've been documenting your abilities since you started working with cursed machinery. Every vampire vehicle you've repaired, every Fae engine you've calibrated, all part of our research into supernatural mechanical interfaces." "Research for what?" Steele pulled out a tablet, swiping through files that made Jamie's stomach churn. Photos of mechanics in hospital beds, charts tracking illness progression, notes written in clinical language that dehumanized suffering into data points. Project Synthesis. The weaponization of supernatural abilities through technological enhancement. Your mother's exposure was just the beginning. We've refined the process considerably since then. The tablet showed a map of the United States dotted with red pins. Dozens of them, scattered across the country. Each pin represents a mechanic who's been exposed to our enhancement technology, Steele continued. Some willingly, some not. All of them are now experiencing complications. "What kind of complications?" Hayes demanded. "The same kind your mother experienced, Doctor. Rapid cellular degeneration unless they receive our proprietary treatment." Steele's expression was coldly satisfied. "Treatment that requires continued cooperation with our research program." Jamie stared at the map, horror growing with each red pin. "You're blackmailing them. Poisoning mechanics and forcing them to work for you. We prefer to think of it as mutually beneficial employment. They provide us with supernatural mechanical expertise, and we provide them with the medicine they need to stay alive." "That's monstrous," Linda whispered. "That's business." Murphy's voice was matter-of-fact. "And right now, business requires Jamie's cooperation." Steele tapped the tablet, bringing up a new screen. "We have 47 enhanced mechanics currently in our employment program. All of them will die within the month unless they receive treatment. Treatment that we will withhold unless you agree to join our research team." "And if I refuse?" "Then you'll be responsible for 47 deaths. Plus your mother's, of course. The gene therapy she's receiving? Also our proprietary formula. Stop cooperating, and the treatment stops as well. Jamie felt Ryder's fury through their bond, a rage so pure it made the air around them shimmer with heat. But underneath his anger was calculation, the tactical mind that had kept his pack alive for decades. What exactly are you asking for? Ryder's voice was deceptively calm. 6 months at our primary research facility. Jamie's abilities will be studied, documented, and replicated. In exchange, all enhanced mechanics receive the treatment they need, and Linda's therapy continues indefinitely. And after 6 months? Steele's smile revealed teeth like tombstones. That depends on how cooperative she's been. Jamie looked at the map again, counting the red pins. 47 people, poisoned and dying because of corporate greed. Mechanics like her, just trying to make a living, caught in a web of supernatural exploitation. Her mother squeezed her hand, understanding the weight of the decision. Don't do it, sweetheart. Don't let them turn you into a weapon. But those people will die whether you cooperate or not, Ryder said quietly. Men like this don't keep promises. They just find new ways to exploit their victims. Steele checked his watch with theatrical precision. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the treatment stops. For everyone. As the men filed out, Murphy paused in the doorway. For what it's worth, Jamie, I am sorry. But this is bigger than any of us. The supernatural world is changing, and humans need to adapt or be left behind. After they left, the hospital room felt like a tomb. Jamie stared at the tablets Steele had left behind, its screen showing the faces of 47 mechanics she'd never met but was now responsible for saving. There has to be another way, she said finally. There is, Ryder replied, his voice carrying the weight of alpha authority. We find their research facility. We expose their operation. And we make sure they never hurt anyone again. Jamie looked at her mother, pale but determined in her hospital bed. At Hayes, whose medical oath demanded he fight for every life. At Ryder, her mate and partner, ready to go to war for strangers they'd never met. They're counting on me feeling guilty, she realized. Counting on me sacrificing myself to save others. Classic manipulation tactic, Ryder agreed. But they made one mistake. What's that? His smile was sharp as winter. They assumed you'd be facing this alone. They forgot you have a pack now. Jamie felt the truth of his words settle into her bones. She wasn't the desperate Omega mechanic who'd worked alone in Murphy's garage anymore. She was alpha mate to one of the strongest werewolf packs in the country, with resources and allies that Nexus Corporation couldn't imagine. 24 hours, she said, her voice steady with new resolve. That should be enough time to start a war. Outside the hospital window, storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. Jamie watched them build and felt something similar growing in her chest, the promise of violence, the certainty of justice. Nexus Corporation had made the mistake of threatening her family. Now they were going to learn why that was a very bad idea. Chapter 8. The scream of metal on metal echoed through the garage as Jamie shut down the cursed engine, her enhanced senses immediately cataloging the damage. Silver contamination in the fuel lines, mercury poisoning in the oil system, and a hex embedded so deep in the electrical components that it would have killed any normal mechanic who tried to work on it. Nexus Corporation, asked Rosa Martinez, the young vampire who'd brought the motorcycle in. Her fangs were barely visible, a sure sign of stress in her kind. Their signature work. Jamie wiped her hands on a rag, her voice carrying the authority of 6 months leading the Supernatural Mechanics Union. Third one this week. They're getting desperate. It had been half a year since the confrontation at the hospital, 6 months of war fought in garages and workshops across the country. The Hells Angels compound had become the headquarters of something unprecedented, a union that protected supernatural workers from corporate exploitation. The garage itself had evolved too. What started as Jamie's personal workspace now sprawled across 3 buildings, staffed by mechanics of every species. Vampire technicians worked the night shift. Fey craftsmen handled the delicate enchantments. Werewolf welders reinforced everything with supernatural strength. And at the center of it all, Jamie's enhanced abilities detected every threat before it could manifest. How bad is it? Rosa asked, her young face tight with worry. Bad enough that you'd be dead if you tried to start her up. Jamie gestured to the diagnostic readout on her enhanced scanner, a device she'd developed specifically to detect cursed machinery. But not so bad that I can't fix it. The process took 2 hours. Jamie's abilities let her trace every thread of the curse, unraveling the malicious code like pulling apart a knot. Her hands moved with supernatural precision, guided by mechanical intuition that had evolved far beyond anything human. There, she said finally, stepping back as the motorcycle's engine purred with perfect health. Clean bill of mechanical well-being. The curse is gone, and I've reinforced the systems against future contamination. Rosa's relief was palpable. How much do I owe you? Union rates. And if anyone approaches you about enhancement opportunities, you call me immediately. After Rosa left, Jamie stood in the doorway watching the organized chaos of her expanded operation. In the main bay, Tank was teaching a group of young werewolves proper welding technique. The skills shop buzzed with fey craftsmen sharing enchantment secrets with witch metallurgists. Even the office area hummed with activity as Nox coordinated union business with packs and covens across 3 time zones. Admiring your empire? Jamie turned to find Ryder approaching, his leather jacket replaced by work clothes that were somehow even more attractive on his massive frame. The bond between them hummed with contentment, deeper now, richer, seasoned by months of shared purpose and hard-won victories. Our empire, she corrected, moving into his arms. I couldn't have done any of this without the pack's backing. The pack backing was never in question. Your vision, though, that was all you. His hands settled on her waist, and Jamie felt their bond warm with pride and something deeper. Speaking of vision, there's something I want to show you. He led her through the compound to a building she rarely visited, the pack's metalworking shop. The space was dominated by a massive forge that could reach temperatures hot enough to work supernatural alloys, and the scent of hot metal and honest sweat filled the air. Been working on a project, Ryder said, his voice carrying a note of nervousness that was entirely unlike him. He moved to a workbench and picked up something wrapped in black velvet. When he pulled the cloth away, Jamie's breath caught in her throat. The ring was unlike anything she'd ever seen. White gold formed intricate Celtic knots around a center stone that seemed to capture and hold light like liquid starfire. But it was more than just beautiful. Her enhanced senses could feel the care that had gone into every detail, the hours of patient work, the love hammered into the metal itself. Ryder. She whispered. I know we're already mated, he said, his alpha confidence replaced by something vulnerable and entirely human. I know the bond makes us permanent in ways that human law can't touch. But I needed to ask properly. He dropped to one knee in the middle of the forge, this powerful alpha surrounded by the tools of honest labor, holding out a ring that represented everything they'd built together. Jamie Cross, alpha mate, union leader, most stubborn omega in the continental United States, will you marry me? Jamie stared down at him, this impossible man who'd given her everything she'd never dared dream of. A home, a purpose, a family that chose her rather than simply tolerating her presence. 6 months ago, she'd been a desperate omega mechanic with no prospects and a dying mother. Now she was a force in the supernatural world, leader of a movement that protected the most vulnerable members of their community. The stone, she said, because she had to know. What is it? Ryder's smile was soft as sunrise. Meteorite. Fell to earth the night we first bonded. Marcus said it was a sign from the moon goddess herself. And you believe that? I believe in you. Everything else is just details. Jamie held out her hand, watching as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, of course, because Ryder never did anything halfway. Yes, she said, the word carrying 6 months of certainty. Yes, you arrogant, protective, impossible alpha. I'll marry you. The kiss that followed tasted like promises and forever. 3 weeks later, the compound hosted a wedding that would be talked about in supernatural circles for decades. Jamie wore a dress that Knox had somehow acquired from a fey designer, white silk that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Ryder stood at the altar in a suit that actually fit his massive frame, looking like a fairy tale prince who'd traded his crown for motorcycle boots. But the real magic was in the guests. Vampire covens sat peacefully beside werewolf packs. Fey nobility shared space with witch circles. Even the dragon clan from Nevada had sent representatives, though they'd chosen to remain in human form for the ceremony. "Never thought I'd see the day," Knox muttered, standing as best man in a tuxedo that made him look surprisingly distinguished. Vampires and werewolves at the same wedding, and nobody's died yet. "Give it time," Marcus replied from his position as officiant. As the pack's elder, he'd earned the honor of performing the ceremony. The reception hasn't started. But there was no violence, no territorial disputes. Jamie's work had created something unprecedented, a neutral ground where supernatural workers could gather regardless of species. The wedding was proof of what they'd all accomplished together. Linda Cross sat in the front row, her health fully restored by the experimental treatment that Nexus Corporation no longer controlled. The Hells Angels had made sure of that, liberating both the research data and the enhanced mechanics through a series of carefully coordinated raids. Director Steele was currently serving a life sentence for crimes against supernatural persons, his corporate empire dismantled and distributed to the people it had exploited. "Do you, Ryder Blackwood, Alpha of the Hells Angels MC, take Jamie Cross to be your wife, your mate, your partner in all things?" "I do," Ryder's voice carried across the compound with the weight of absolute certainty. "And do you, Jamie Cross, Omega of the Hells Angels MC, leader of the Supernatural Mechanics Union, take Ryder Blackwood to be your husband, your mate, your partner in all things?" Jamie looked out at the assembled crowd, her pack, her union, her chosen family. People who'd been strangers 8 months ago were now the foundation of her world. Vampire mechanics sat beside werewolf welders. Fey enchanters shared jokes with witch metallurgists. Tank was actually smiling, which she'd previously thought was physically impossible. "I do," she said, her voice steady with joy. "Then by the power vested in me by pack law and the sovereign state of, well, several states, actually." Marcus's dry humor earned chuckles from the crowd. "I pronounce you husband and wife, mated partners, Alpha and Omega. You may kiss your bride, assuming you can reach her from down there." The laughter that followed was warm and genuine, the sound of a community celebrating one of their own. Ryder's kiss tasted like happiness and new beginnings, and when they finally broke apart, the cheers were loud enough to rattle the compound's windows. The reception went late into the night, powered by supernatural energy and genuine affection. Jamie danced with her husband under stars that seemed brighter than usual, surrounded by the people who'd helped them build something beautiful from the ashes of corporate greed. "No regrets?" Ryder asked as they swayed to music provided by a surprisingly talented vampire string quartet. "Only one," Jamie replied, her hands linked behind his neck. "What's that?" "I wish we could have met sooner. Saved ourselves some time. Time we needed to become who we are now," Ryder pointed out. "You had to learn to fight for what you believed in. I had to learn that strength comes from protecting people, not just dominating them." Very philosophical for a biker alpha. Very wise for someone who used to think happiness came from a perfectly tuned engine. Jamie laughed, the sound carrying across the compound like music. "I still think that, actually. The difference is now I know the engine that matters most is the one that powers a community." 3 months later, Jamie stood in the garage's main bay, watching a group of apprentice mechanics work on their first major project. Young supernatural workers from every species, learning not just technical skills but the ethics that would keep them safe in a world that often saw their abilities as commodities to be exploited. "Remember," she told them, her voice carrying the authority of experience, "your enhanced abilities are gifts, not curses. They make you valuable, but they also make you targets. The union exists to ensure that no one can exploit those gifts without your consent." A young werewolf raised his hand. "What if someone offers us a lot of money? My family could really use." "Money is temporary," Jamie interrupted gently. "Your integrity, your safety, your freedom, those are permanent. No amount of cash is worth selling your soul to people who see you as a resource to be harvested. She moved between the workstations, her enhanced senses automatically checking their progress. The bond with Ryder hummed with contentment, but underneath it was something new, a different kind of awareness that had nothing to do with mechanical intuition. Life. Two small sparks of it, growing inside her with each passing day. The twins were due in 5 months, and already she could feel their potential through the mate bond. Strong, like their father. Gifted, like their mother. But most importantly, they would be born into a world where supernatural abilities were protected rather than exploited. Boss? Tank appeared in the garage doorway, his massive frame somehow managing to look sheepish. You've got visitors. Big ones. Jamie looked through the windows and saw them, dragons, in their full magnificent forms, landed in the compound's main courtyard. The Nevada clan had come calling, and they hadn't bothered with human disguises. Well, she said to her apprentices, looks like class is dismissed early today. Remember what we discussed about ethics, and I'll see you all tomorrow. As the young mechanics filed out, chattering excitedly about seeing real dragons, Jamie put her hand on her still flat stomach and felt the future stirring beneath her palm. Her children would grow up in a world where supernatural workers had rights, protections, and a community that valued them for who they were rather than what they could provide. The garage that had started as her sanctuary had become something bigger, a symbol of what was possible when people chose cooperation over exploitation, community over corporate greed. Ryder appeared at her side, his presence as comforting as it was powerful. Ready to find out what the dragons want? Jamie looked around the garage one more time, seeing not just the machines and tools but the future they represented. A place where supernatural workers could learn and grow safely. A community that protected its own. A legacy worth passing on to the next generation. Ready, she said, her hand finding his. Whatever they want, we'll face it together. Through the mate bond, she felt his absolute certainty, his unwavering commitment to the life they'd built. Chrome hearts, forged in the fires of adversity, tempered by love and made stronger through shared purpose. The future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibility and rich with promise. And at the center of it all, the simple truth that had started everything. Sometimes the most powerful thing in the world was knowing exactly who you were and refusing to let anyone convince you to be less. Jamie Cross Blackwood, alpha mate, union leader, mother-to-be, walked out to meet whatever challenges awaited, her enhanced abilities singing with the health and harmony of every machine in her domain. The mechanic had become so much more than anyone could have imagined. But at heart, she was still the woman who believed that with the right tools and enough determination, anything could be fixed. Epilogue, 5 years later. The sound of laughter echoed through the garage as 5-year-old Emma Blackwood tried to explain to her twin brother why his toy motorcycle wouldn't start. You have to listen to her first, Jake, she said with the infinite patience of someone who'd inherited her mother's mechanical intuition. She's telling you the spark plug is sad. Jake, who'd gotten his father's stubborn streak along with his mother's green eyes, crossed his arms and glowered. Motorcycles don't have feelings, Em. Everything has feelings if you know how to listen. Jamie watched from her workbench, trying not to smile as her daughter attempted to teach supernatural mechanics to her decidedly skeptical brother. Emma had manifested her enhanced abilities early, able to sense the emotions of machines before she could properly tie her shoes. Jake's gifts were different. He could strengthen any mechanical system just by touching it, his alpha inheritance combining with her omega genetics in ways that fascinated supernatural researchers. Having philosophical differences? Ryder's voice carried amusement as he entered the garage, still wearing his motorcycle leathers from the morning patrol. Jake doesn't believe machines have personalities, Emma explained seriously. But Grandma Linda's car definitely has anxiety issues. Your grandmother's car is 20 years old and held together with duct tape and prayer, Ryder pointed out, scooping up his daughter for a hug. Of course it has anxiety. Linda Cross appeared in the garage doorway as if summoned, her silver hair catching the afternoon light. At 72, she moved with the energy of someone half her age, the experimental treatment having not just cured her cancer but given her a vitality that showed no signs of fading. Are you talking about Betsy? She asked, referring to her ancient Honda with the fond exasperation of a longtime pet owner. Because I'll have you know she just needs a little encouragement. She needs a priest, Knox called from across the garage, where he was training a group of apprentices in advanced diagnostics. That thing rattles like it's haunted. She's not haunted, Emma said with 5-year-old certainty. She's just lonely. All the other cars in the parking lot are newer. Jamie finally gave up trying to hide her smile. Maybe we should introduce her to some of the vintage bikes in storage. Make some friends her own age. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Rosa Martinez, who'd grown from nervous young vampire to Jamie's most trusted lieutenant in the 5 years since that first cursed motorcycle. She carried a tablet displaying the latest union statistics, but her expression was purely satisfied. The Washington State chapter just certified their 100th member, she announced. And the Fay Court in Portland has officially recognized supernatural workers' rights in all their territorial agreements. How many does that make total? Ryder asked, settling Emma on his hip while Jake climbed onto Jamie's workbench. 15,000 active members across 47 states, Rosa replied with pride. 3 chapters in Canada, 2 in Mexico, and the European Werewolf Council wants to discuss expansion. Jamie shook her head in wonder. What had started as a desperate fight for survival had grown into an international movement. The Supernatural Mechanics Union now protected everyone from vampire technicians to dragon metallurgists, ensuring fair wages, safe working conditions, and protection from corporate exploitation. Any Nexus Corporation activity? Jamie asked, though she already knew the answer. The remaining corporate holdouts had learned to avoid supernatural workers entirely after the Hells Angels had made their position clear. Dead quiet. Literally, in some cases. Rosa's vampire smile showed just a hint of fang. Amazing how cooperative humans become when they realize we're not defenseless anymore. Tank emerged from the welding bay, his massive frame somehow managing to look paternal as he supervised a group of young werewolves working on their certification projects. The sight of him patiently explaining proper safety procedures to teenagers would have been unimaginable 6 years ago, but leadership had changed all of them. Boss, he said to Jamie, we've got 3 more applications for the apprentice program. 2 wolves and a witch. Good test scores, solid recommendations. Set up interviews for next week, Jamie replied automatically, then caught herself. Actually, let me look at their files first. I want to make sure they understand what they're signing up for. The truth was, the union had grown beyond what any of them had imagined possible. What started as worker protection had evolved into something approaching supernatural civil rights. Jamie's garage remained the symbolic heart of the movement, but the real work now happened in chapter houses across the continent, each one a beacon of safety for supernatural workers. Mommy, Emma said suddenly, her small face serious. The new motorcycle outside is crying. Jamie's enhanced senses automatically reached out, finding the machine Emma had detected. A Harley, probably 15 years old, with the distinctive emotional resonance of a bike that had lost its rider. Whose is it? She asked Rosa. New transfer from the Las Vegas chapter. Owner died in an accident, and his daughter wants to make sure the bike goes to someone who'll appreciate her properly. Jamie nodded, understanding. Motorcycles bonded to their riders in ways that went deeper than mechanics, and a bike mourning its lost human was always heartbreaking. We'll find her a good home, she promised Emma. Someone who'll listen to her stories. Can I help pick? Emma asked hopefully. We'll see. Evening brought the familiar ritual of family dinner in the compound's main hall. The long tables that had once seated only pack members now accommodated a rainbow coalition of supernatural species. Vampire mechanics sat beside werewolf welders, their differences set aside in favor of shared purpose and mutual respect. Jamie looked around the hall, marveling at how normal it all seemed now. Emma was explaining motorcycle feelings to a patient dragon craftsman while Jake attempted to arm wrestle a teenage werewolf twice his size. Linda held court at the head table, regaling anyone who'd listen with stories of the old days, when supernatural workers had no protection and fewer options. Penny for your thoughts? Ryder asked, sliding into the seat beside her. Just thinking about how far we've come, Jamie replied, leaning into his warmth. 6 years ago, I was afraid to tell anyone what I was. Now our daughter treats supernatural abilities like the most natural thing in the world. Because for her, they are natural. Ryder's hand found hers, their wedding rings catching the light. She's never known a world where being supernatural meant hiding or being exploited. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't walked into Murphy's garage that night. I'd have found you eventually, Ryder said with alpha certainty. Fate doesn't make mistakes that big. Later, after the children were tucked into bed and the compound had settled into evening quiet, Jamie found herself back in the garage. It was her refuge still, the place where she felt most centered and most herself. The space had evolved over the years, bigger, more sophisticated, filled with diagnostic equipment that would have been science fiction when she'd worked for Murphy. But at its heart, it remained what it had always been, a place where broken things could be made whole. Can't sleep? Knox asked, appearing in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. Just thinking. Jamie accepted the coffee gratefully. Emma asked me today why some people want to hurt supernatural workers. I didn't know how to explain it. Fear, Knox said simply. People are afraid of what they don't understand, and instead of trying to learn, they try to control or destroy. She's so innocent. Both of them are. They can't imagine a world where their abilities would be seen as threats instead of gifts. That's the world we've built for them, Knox pointed out. A world where supernatural children can grow up safe and proud of who they are. Through the garage windows, Jamie could see the compound's night lights creating pools of warmth in the darkness. Guard towers that had once been military fortifications now housed supernatural workers pulling security shifts for the sheer satisfaction of protecting their community. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The old days, when it was just the pack. Knox considered the question seriously. I miss the simplicity sometimes. When the biggest worry was territory disputes and rival gangs. But I wouldn't trade what we have now for anything. Even with all the politics. The bureaucracy. The endless meetings with supernatural councils. Especially because of those things, Knox replied firmly. It means we're not just surviving anymore. We're thriving. We're building something that will last long after we're gone. Jamie nodded, understanding. The Union had grown beyond anything they'd originally envisioned, but its success was measured in more than numbers or territory. It was measured in young supernatural workers who didn't have to hide their abilities, in families who didn't have to choose between safety and prosperity, in children like Emma and Jake who would never know the fear that had defined their mother's early life. The Dragon delegation wants to establish a technical college, Knox continued. Full curriculum in supernatural mechanics, with degree programs recognized by human universities. They want you to be the first dean. Jamie nearly choked on her coffee. A college? Knox, I barely finished high school. You've got 5 years of experience running the most successful supernatural workers organization in history. That's worth more than any degree. Knox's smile was warm with pride. Besides, who better to teach the next generation than the woman who created the whole movement? The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. A supernatural technical college would legitimize their work in ways that even the Union couldn't, creating formal pathways for young workers to develop their abilities safely and ethically. I'll think about it, she said finally. That's all anyone can ask. After Knox left, Jamie remained in the garage, surrounded by the machines that had been her companions through every stage of her journey. From Murphy's hostile workspace to this sanctuary of learning and growth, her relationship with mechanical things had evolved but never wavered. She put her hand on the workbench where she'd first examined Ryder's sabotage Harley, feeling the echo of that pivotal moment. Everything had changed because she'd been brave enough to take a job that scared her, desperate enough to risk everything for people who mattered. Now Emma and Jake would grow up in a world where such desperation wasn't necessary. They would have choices their mother never had, opportunities that existed because Jamie had refused to accept that survival was the best she could hope for. The garage door chimed softly, and Ryder appeared with a blanket and another cup of coffee. Figured you might be out here, he said, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. Just saying goodnight to the engines, Jamie replied, leaning into his embrace. All of them sleeping peacefully. All of them dreaming of tomorrow's adventures. She turned in his arms, looking up at the face that had become her anchor through every storm. Thank you. For what? For walking into Murphy's garage that night. For giving me a reason to fight. For believing I could be more than I thought possible. Ryder's kiss tasted like promises kept and future hopes. Thank you for saving my life. For building something beautiful from the ashes of corporate greed. For giving me a family I never knew I wanted. They stood together in the garage that had become the heart of a movement, surrounded by the quiet hum of sleeping machines and the distant sounds of their chosen family settling into peaceful dreams. Outside, the compound's lights created a constellation of safety and belonging in the darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to protect and serve the supernatural community they'd helped build. But tonight, in the garage where it all began, Jamie Cross Blackwood was content to hold her husband close and listen to the mechanical lullabies that had carried her through every chapter of her extraordinary journey. The Omega who had once believed she was worthless had become the cornerstone of a revolution. And the best part was, this was only the beginning. Thank you for listening to this story. Like, share and subscribe for more.